Today's video is not going to be a repair in that sense, but rather a reconditioning of this Formant modular synthesizer from the Electro magazine. It seems to be working okay, but this spaghetti wiring, for example, is just unworthy of such a cool instrument. Also the wooden frame, I mean, just look at this. It's basically just chipboard partially covered with veneer, and underneath some cracks. There's some mold having a good time. I wouldn't even feel comfortable to have this in the house. So why don't we just make a new box from these fancy ash boards I had lying around from another project. I disposed of the wooden box right away, so this is only the main rack with the modules. It is 19 inches wide and it's probably called a 6-unit sub-rack with subdivision from Fischer Electronic, German company. And I'm just taking out the modules here to avoid getting dust all over them while I take some measurements of the rack. The original wooden box had the front panel tilted by 10 degrees and it also had a lot of free space inside, so it had a really big footprint. I don't want it to be tilted, and the fitted power supply is a ridiculous overkill. It only needs to be 15 volts, 5 volts, minus 15 volts with 1 amp each. So I'm certain that I can clear a lot of space just by modernizing the power supply. And then there is still an empty module slot and a lot of space underneath the bottom row of modules, so I don't have to worry about running out of space anytime soon. That's why I'm going to fit my new wooden box as tightly as possible around the rack. Here are my finished boards. Absolutely spot on. Now I briefly considered hand making a dovetail tenon joint just for the woodworking bonus, but I tend to mistrust everything that involves freehanding something. So I ended up trying some other things, such as this 1 saw blade thickness finger joint. But because the microscopic but indisputable error I made while creating the slat for this multiplies with the number of cuts I make, it turned out pretty inaccurate in the end. And then I decided to create another table saw slat using the rails to guarantee absolutely square cuts. I just glued this scrap piece of plywood on there and put some weight on it overnight. Then I attached another board over the saw blade slot for stability, cleaned up the glue, and used some precision ground aluminium blocks to attach another board for workpiece alignment. With that slat I got some slightly better results, because it didn't have the accumulating error problem, but still some manual work was involved, so it wasn't absolutely perfect, and you could see some tiny little gaps in the finger joints in the end. So again, I went for a different approach, this time with my CNC milling machine, but that came with its own set of problems. First, I didn't have long enough milling bits, so I had to flip the board around, which can cause some alignment issues. And secondly, I can only fix the board flat on the table, so I'm going to have some rounded corners with 2mm radius because my milling bit was 2mm in diameter. But I can rectify those manually easily. I used this fine straight wood saw to clean up the rounded corners, and then I did a quick dry fit around the rack to see if everything would line up perfectly, which luckily it did, so I glued it all up and let it sit overnight. Then I gave it a quick sanding with this dirt cheap detail sander. Oh, and by the way, the big flight case you can see in the background here contains one of the first computer synthesizer systems ever created. So you can look forward to another interesting set of videos I'm going to do about that thing. Anyway, my wooden frame turned out beautifully. In the last part of this video I'm going to mount the transformer in the wooden frame. Originally it was held in place vertically with two angular brackets, and that was okay because of all the free space in there. But now that I've got everything a little tighter, I want to mount the transformer horizontally. And that can be done very elegantly because there are already 4 M4 machine screw sized holes in it. Just gotta make sure that I can still fit a module with a standard 100 x 160mm PCB above it. And then I'm going to use brass dowels to secure the machine screws in the wooden plate. I marked the holes, again with help of my beloved precision ground aluminium blocks. I used a 5mm drill bit for this to get a good fit around my brass dowels, and then I only had to fit the whole thing under my drill press somehow. I kind of got it done for the first 2 holes. But for the other two I had to go and fetch this crusty old hand drill. The holes lined up perfectly, so I dropped in my wooden dowels, and then all that was left to do was to slide the transformer on the machine screw shafts and secure it with some nuts. And that's the end of this video. I think I'm going to make a series out of this in which I'm going to overhaul the whole synthesizer, because some of the PCBs have a pretty terrible quality. I really would love to renew them, and I think I'm going to get some more interesting footage out of that. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching and see you soon.